Hello YouTube! Today we're going to be discussing information and facts about all the Christian albums I own. Unlike previous videos where I discuss the albums from least familiar with and recognizable to most, I'm going to be presenting these 16 albums in chronological order. So the first one's going to be from 1960, and the most recent one's going to be all the way from just last year. So without further ado, here's some information about all the Christian albums I own. The oldest one I have is Elvis Presley's first gospel record from 1960 called His Hand in Mine. This is a good collection of soft and upbeat Christian songs he did with vocal group the Jordanaires. The title track, Jesus Knows What I Need, and Man's Over the Hilltop are just beautiful slow-paced songs, while there's some upbeat fast ones on here like I'm Gonna Walk Them Golden Stairs and Working on the Building. And Elvis just sings these songs with his signature gospel-like choir and his familiar voice that has been a big part of American culture. And this is just a good collection of gospel songs. My fun fact about His Hand in Mine is that, according to the album's liner notes written by Robert Kotowitz, every song on this album that Elvis covered are made up entirely of songs he had heard, enjoyed, and sang in church ever since he was a little toddler. Next album is Elvis's next gospel album, called How Great Thou Art. Another great mix of gospel songs. There's some slow ones on side one, like the title track, Somebody Bigger Than You and I. And there's some faster ones on side two, like By and By, and his rendition of Crying in the Chapel he did with the Jordanaires. This is not quite as memorable as His Hand in Mine, or not as much a masterpiece, but it's another great collection of spiritual Jesus songs. My fun fact about Elvis' second gospel record is that the church and steeple that is shown on this album cover is the First Church of Christ located in Sandwich, Massachusetts. Next up, we have one of the most famous concept albums written about Jesus, and this has an all-star cast of talented performers. The soundtrack to Lloyd and Webber and Tim Rice's Jesus Christ Superstar. What an interesting rock opera that talks about what Jesus went through in his last week, from going into Jerusalem to him being crucified, which saved all of humanity, myself included. There's just very interesting moments of the story of Jesus being told through Judas Iscariot's perspective, like the Last Supper, Jesus getting his 39 lashes, and just the King Herod and Simon Zealots and the people that crucified him begging for him to die. It's an amazing album filled with a lot of guitar and a lot of great personnel. And now my two fun facts about this soundtrack album is that when Lloyd and Tim came up with the concept for this album musical, Tim had told Lloyd that, what if we told the story of Jesus through Judas Iscariot's perspective? And that for the album's recording, both Lloyd and Tim drew personnel from both music theater and the British rock scene, such as Murray Head, Ian Gillan of Deep Purple, and drummer Bruce Rowland from the Grease Band. This next album I talked about in my favorite albums in 1973, but I'm going to talk about it again, just from a different perspective. The Lost and Found No. 2 collection from the Kansas City-based Christian company. A lot of great spiritual songs on here, like All of Me, Jesus Is All the World to Me. The spiritual song, There's Joy in That Land. A lot of great vocals, as I said. A lot of great quoting of Bible passages, and just an all-around great collection of Christian songs. The liner notes say that the final song of the album, Coming Out of Jesus, is really the most important thing that they have to say, and it is the most important thing, because when you come to Jesus, he changes you. I could not find another interesting fact about this album, but this local collection of spiritual songs was copyrighted by Lil Ennis Publishing Company from Kansas City, Missouri. Next up are two albums from this legendary singer, songwriter, pianist that died last year, but he's got two incredible albums. First of which is Glow in the Dark from 1976. A lot of great songs on here, like I Remember, Return, the Easter Resurrection Ballad, So Thankful, the bluesy Something Supernatural. Chuck has got some interesting lyrics on here, and No, You're Not Afraid is just a beautiful song about doing the things you did when you got saved, and it's just a very mellow to loud, upbeat album. My fun fact about Glow in the Dark is that on this album, a stellar cast of musicians are supporting this pioneer of contemporary Christian music, including Klaus Vormann, guitarist Dan Ferguson, and the treble Jim Gordon that used to play with both Derek and the Dominoes and Frank Zappa's band. Next up is the follow-up album he put out the following year, 1977's Written on the Wind. This isn't quite as memorable in my music taste as Glow in the Dark, but even more good songs like Spirit Wind, Fool for Jesus, Peace in the Valley, Plain Old Joe's an interesting ballad about a man that lived on a farm-like area. As I said with this album, interesting singer-songwriter and nice cloud-like art. This is just another great collection of spiritual songs and just interesting songwriting in general. That my fun fact about this album is that this album's art direction and photography were conducted by David Larkham and Christian McCoyne individually. The next two albums are two Christian gospel albums that one of the greatest secular singer-songwriters did more than 40 years ago as I'm recording this. And the first one is Slow Train Coming from 1979. Bob Dylan writes some incredible stuff, but when he got saved at the end of his 78 tour, he decided to write songs about his faith in Jesus. This is demonstrated in songs like I Believe in You, When You Gonna Wake Up, and the piano ballad When He Returns. Gotta Serve Somebody is definitely the biggest hit, and it got a lot of mixed reactions from people. Even John Lennon, who did the song Serve Yourself the following year before he got murdered. This is just a very interesting bluesy record that, believe it or not, Mark Knopfler plays guitar on. And this is just a good example of like a secular singer-songwriter being converted and changing his style of lyrics to reflect his faith, which only happened for a brief period. My fun fact about this legendary Christian album from a mostly secular singer-songwriter is that during this album's supporting gospel tour, Bob Dylan refused to play any of his older compositions as well as any secular material, playing nothing but original gospel material. Fans and hecklers that wish to hear his stuff from 1978 and earlier openly expressed their disappointment. By the way, this tour started in San Francisco and no one knew what he was going to do or play. And when he did all gospel songs, the fans booed, some walked out, some begged him to play his secular stuff like a Rolling Stone, Tangled Up in Blue, even Mr. Tambourine Man and Blowin' in the Wind. Next up, we have the follow-up to Slow Train Coming, Saved. A lot of Bob Dylan fans hate this album, but because of me being saved and believing in Jesus, I love it. A lot of good songs on here, like the upbeat title track, Solid Rock, the gospel-inspired Pressing On, the drum and choir heavy Are You Ready? Covenant Woman is also an interesting song lyrically and musically. This isn't quite as memorable and beloved as Slow Train Coming, but A lot of Dylan fans should really appreciate this, in my opinion, instead of have total hatred for it. And my fun fact about Dylan's 20th studio album and second gospel record is that in 2014, Tom Hawking of Flavor Wire included this record in his list of the 50 worst albums ever made, saying that the album was, quote, proof that even our greatest songwriters fall to pieces whenever they try to make Christian music. Three of these next 4 albums are from this legendary Christian metal band. And this first one is the debut EP from Stryper. This isn't quite as memorable as their later stuff, but there's some good songs on here, like You Won't Be Lonely and From Wrong to Right. It's just a 6-song EP that helped get their start. The name of the album is The Yellow and Black Attack, which is a reference to what they wear, yellow and black spandex outfits. Michael Sweet and Robert Sweet's vocals and drums just sweep through Stryper's stuff, as does Oz Fox's lead guitar and Timothy Gaines' bass. It's just very interesting to have an 80s metal sounding album that's lyrics are about Jesus. The other ones also I'll talk about a little later. My fun fact about the Yellow and Black Attack is that when this album was originally issued, fewer than 20,000 copies were pressed because their label Enigma wasn't sure of the potential market for Christian metal for the 6-song EP. This next album, actually these next 2 are ones I talked about, my favorite albums in 1985, but like with Lost and Found number 2, I'm going to discuss it in a different kind of way. Amy Grant's Unguarded, as I said, in my favorite albums of 85, very upbeat, synthy songs like Everywhere I Go, Find a Way, the ballad The Prodigal, which she did, Stepping to Your Shoes, which to me is about stepping in someone's foot when preaching the gospel. This is just an interesting album from a big pioneer of Christian music, Amy Grant. And my fun fact about Unguarded is that, as I shared in my favorite albums of 1985 video, this was the final ever album that was recorded at the Caribou Ranch in Nederland, Colorado, before an infamous fire in March of that year destroyed the studio's control room. Next we have the first full-length album from Stryper, Soldiers Under Command. A lot of good songs on here, like Together Forever, Reach Out. The ballad Together is one. This is a good Jesus metal album. And Stryper marketed themselves as being true soldiers on this album, based on the album's Bible verse, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. This is just a cool way to introduce them after their 6-song EP. My fun facts about this album is that this is the first album in the Christian metal subgenre to achieve gold record status, which means it sold 500,000 copies or more. Next up, we have the follow-up to Soldiers, 1986's To Hell with the Devil. This is considered one of their best albums, if not their best. A lot of good rocking songs on here, like the title track, Calling on You, the ballads, Honestly, and Holding On. And More Than a Man is just a pretty epic Jesus song to end this album. The vocals of Michael Sweet, as always, just roar through this album as with the other 2. And this is just kind of the album to use if you were to get anyone to Stryper, in my humble opinion. My 2 fun facts about To Hell with the Devil are that Michael Sweet felt that Tim Gaines wasn't the right bassist for the record, so he got replaced by 2 other bassists, the latter of whom took his place. However, Tim was asked to rejoin Stryper before this album's supporting tour began. And that HM Magazine stated back in 2010 that when this album broke, it went multi-platinum, forever raising the ceiling of what heavy Christian music could do for souls like me. Okay, we are in the last 4 albums, which all came out within the last 30 years. And the first one of this batch is a holiday album that tells the story of the Nativity throughout. And it's another rock opera, Trans-Siberian Orchestra's legendary debut album, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. What can I say about this? It's just an epic masterpiece filled with a lot of great renditions of holiday songs done in a heavy metal and prog style, like Christmas Eve Sarajevo, O Come All Ye Faithful, instrumental renditions of songs like The First Noel, and just a good storyline about a Christmas at a bar where 2 men share the story of Jesus being born. And songs about, and stories about angels, and just a great rock opera vibe, and one of the greatest Christmas albums ever. My fun fact about this legendary debut album from this legendary holiday band is that this album and band were conceived as a side project by Paul O'Neill, co-producer Robert Kenkel, and guitarist John Olivia to simply explore holiday music with heavy metal and progressive rock influences, and that this album's storyline simply talks about a man wandering into a bar and an older man joining him who tells him the nativity story. Themes of angels, Jesus, and even trips to airports are seen throughout this rock opera, as seen in songs like Prince of Peace and This Christmas Day. Next up, we have a debut album from this legendary contemporary Christian rock band, Casting Crowns. What an album this is, filled with a lot of good spiritual songs like Voice of Truth, If We Are the Body, American Dream. A lot of good praiseworthy songs like Glory and Praise You with the Dance. But this album's centerpiece to me is the song Who Am I? Talks about what one's life would look like without Jesus, and saying it's not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Mark Hall and the 6 other guys that make up this band just lead with praise, grace, and enthusiasm for Jesus. And this is just such a good album, and what drew me to pick this up was they had this for $6 at my local record store. So I got this along with 2 other albums for a good bargain, as my favorite record store, which is Sweetside in Glens Falls, does. My fun fact about this legendary debut album from Casting Crowns is that this is only one of 8 Christian albums to ever be certified 2 times platinum by the RIAA, and holds the distinction of being the 11th best-selling Christian album of the 2000s in the United States. These last 2 albums are the 2 albums from one of the biggest voices in modern Christian music. I got into this guy last year because one of his biggest hits just struck a chord with me, and it made me want to get that album on vinyl because of the subject matter of one of the songs that I'll discuss in a minute. But anyway, here's the first of the 2, the independently successfully released Prodigal. A lot of great upbeat Christian folk pop songs on here, like Garden in Manhattan being a good metaphor call to evangelism, Fishes and Lobes, Altars Over Stages, My Promised Land, and of course the title track, which broke a lot of records and became a big hit. And I've heard that song many times the last couple of years. Josiah's energy and just his heart being on fire for Jesus is what drew me to him, and he's just got some incredible songs both on this and his next album. My fun fact about The Prodigal is that despite this being an independently released album, It is considered to be the biggest streaming LP debut in contemporary Christian music history at 6.6 million streams worldwide. We got one more album, and it's the follow-up they put out last year, Mount Zion. This, to me, is even a better improvement from his debut. A lot of good, more upbeat, folky Christian songs like Can't Steal My Joy with Brandon Lake, Watch Your Mouth, his modern reinterpretation of the classic hymn I'll Fly Away he did with Benjamin William Hastings, and of course, Dusty Bibles, which is the song that led me to buy this album and get into this guy, which is a song about the tensions between growing in faith amidst the comforts of the modern world, which is scrolling on social media, looking at your phone. There's some other good gems on here, like Cloud and Fire and the Riptide influenced closer Adonai, Lord of My Life. This is just amazing, and I love how he shot the cover out in Zion National Park and how him looking. This is just one of the most beautiful nature scenic album covers. And the record itself matches, because it said it's pumpkin spice orange. Again, Josiah Queen has struck a chord with me over the past year because of his ability to write praiseworthy songs while making them musically upbeat folk pop. My fun fact about Mount Zion is that JesusFreakHideout.com referred to the songs on this album as, quote, rafter raising and arena ready, while maintaining a folk/folk pop sounds with lyrics mainly centered about Jesus. Well, there you have it. The 16 Christian albums I have from 1960 all the way to last year. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to get notified on whenever I post a new video, and that I hope you listen to these albums and be led to the Lord for them just like I did. This is Alex of My Favorite Facts About Music and Other Cool Topics. Once again, signing off.